Hello and welcome to the program. Today is a free-form discussion on writing, publishing, and authorship.
Hello everyone.
Hey, what's going on? Let's hit the news real quick just before we get into some stuff, because there's actually something I've been playing with for the last couple of days, so we can talk about that. This is actually kind of remarkable. May streaming performance up 50% year over year on the average. Kind of amazing how that's happening. The session from a couple of weeks ago of this space is up on podcast platforms. We hit some details on the Relics anthology and talked creativity broadly, I would say. Also, interview from Wally Waltner, editor and writer over at Raconteur Press. And finally, the pre-order for The Love of God is up until June 23rd. I got to get that wrapped up. I am very close to getting it done and getting it up on the KDP so it goes live on the 23rd for the people that have pre-ordered.
It's always kind of a, like a juggling act, when should I make it go pre-order, or will I get it done in time? And, usually one gets it all in place, but it still sometimes feels like juggling.
Yeah. So the thing I've been kind of playing around with over the last couple of days, sorry, I'm moving my phone because I was doing manual stuff on there, and then now I'm just getting it placed, so apologize for the noise. But I have been getting back into the design of my website, and I know that we talked marketing not too long ago, and I don't want to necessarily make this a marketing discussion, but I'm just finding that as I'm updating my personal site and integrating a couple of tools, basically, to begin actually rolling out a very basic content strategy on my.com. Kind of just finding like that SEO and AEO or GEO, whatever you want to call it, as LLMs and AI are integrated into search and the answers, which is what the A and AEO stands for, answer engine optimization. You want to start thinking about how your websites are interfacing with those two audiences. And this is something that I've talked about for 15 years. But I think that at this point, where in the past I was very much still saying like, hey, you need to serve the human audience, I think that at this point we're very much at the stage where you need to serve the synthetic audience first and allow them to optimize for the human audience, because there's just so much connective tissue under the hood of the web and the walled gardens and stuff that, to not begin to prepare, for whatever kind of comes after the movement to mobile that we had, and move away from the web and all the things that are kind of going on there. I think you'd want to be thinking about it.
Michael, really quick, could you explain what you mean by walled gardens? That's not a term I've heard before, except that the Persian word for walled gardens was paradise. The Greeks picked it up and made it so, it ran with it. But it could sound like a term of art, and since I haven't heard it before, I wonder if you could explain it.
Yeah, so walled gardens, that phrase is a term you use for platforms that kind of own the experience and the users. in a big way, right? So like AOL was a walled garden back in the day because they controlled how the content moved through their system, and they controlled the user base, right? Whereas the web, you kind of don't really, at a national level, yeah, you can do those kind of things. At an individual level, it gets a little bit shakier. So yeah, walled gardens are just kind of those like very produced and controlled experiences with user sets.
Would Facebook and X and things like that count as walled gardens?
Facebook, no. Twitter, increasingly, yes. But at the same time, there's portions of things that are yeses even within those ecosystems, and then portions of things that are slightly no's, right? Where I would say over the last 3 or 4 years, Twitter has begun to disappear off of the open web. It has become more of a walled garden, while Facebook has these sorts of walled gardens that exist. They also do a massive amount of open source resource development and maintenance for the web. And, it's just, I don't want to get into like a huge technical discussion about like why those things are that way, but yeah.
That's fine. I just trying to get a rough idea. I didn't want to really derail you, but I just enough of an idea so I understood what you were saying.
Yeah. So I think that, for me, with the content marketing thing kind of being so dominant for me over the last 20 years, that I'm going to integrate some of that stuff into my website in a very basic way, just to test ultimately over the remainder of this year. I'm not going to move other kind of social media stuff that I do there. It is going to be more evergreen than timely, but I think that that to me is kind of serving the goal of talking with or talking to the technology underlying SEO and AEO, GEO, that kind of stuff. Because I already have some things that exist within the LLMs, these black boxes. I know that they're in there because I see the traffic coming out of them to locations. So just trying to think more about that, because I think that by the end of this decade, you're going to be very solidly in a different paradigm, where we were, say, through like the 2010s. We're not in that era anymore.
So my understanding, if I'm understanding you right, and from other things I've heard, and I'm already sort of doing this, is and I've heard people say this as well, and now I'm going to say the thing, that most people are going to start going through their AIs instead of going through Google search. So it's going to get, I think it's a little bit different than what you're saying, but it's sort of the same thing. They're going to be going through their AIs and saying things like, instead of going on to Amazon and, saying, I want to buy, well, I suppose we'll stick with books. I want to buy a fantasy novel about a young girl at a magic school, right? The LLM or the AI, whatever you want to call it, is going to be the thing that's going to pull up options for you, and it's going to know you because you've developed a relationship with it, which I think So
and
far, none of
it's
them.
going to say, hey, here's 10 books about magic schools that you might like. You know, say, I've already read J.K. Rowling. I need more magic school books, right?
Yeah.
Thing. So, I mean, is this what you're pointing at? And so I think like these Google searches, the algorithm's going to change to become, frankly, I think it's going to become more personal. So that
I think so too, but I hope they stop hallucinating because haven't got a single one of them to list my books correctly.
Who the AIs?
Yeah, whenever I've gone, the first thing I ever do when I interact with an AI is ask about my books because I'm like, well, I'll be able to tell if it's telling me the truth. And none of them have ever given me a fully correct answer. They've gotten better, like they're better than they used to be. But then they get things like telling me that I'm just a pseudonym for somebody else, or listing the first 3 books and then 4 other books that have nothing to do with me. And it's just strange. Like, the information is there. If you're getting part of it, you think it wouldn't be that hard to get the other part. But so far, they haven't, makes me wonder about everything else they do.
There's 2 sides on that. There's what the model is actually trained on, which may or may not include some or all of the material out there. But then there's also the interfacing, right?
Yeah, just asking it to look for something.
Well, I mean, what was called prompt engineering for, maybe a couple of years ago. That term isn't as popular anymore because we're using more natural language to interface with these things. But I think I'm trying to address both of the things that you said, and I probably should do the stuff that Heidi said first. So when they're talking about AEO, they're talking about answer engines. That's what they want to call, not necessarily an LLM, but a kind of truncated or targeted version that they're putting into their search UI. So, they're giving you this kind of rapid answer, and then you can expand it, when you do a search, but you still get all the other search results. But those answers are still based on the SEO information that's there. It's just that now they're getting an additional layer above the machine learning stuff that goes on for like big data and stuff, the stuff we were talking about 10, 15 years ago, that now you're getting to this other neural network layer where there's like multiple kind of slivers of stuff that it's working through. That is going to take as long as it took us to make search engines good, which took, arguably 10 or 15 years, realistically. The first kind of catalogs of the internet started showing up in the mid 90s. I wouldn't say that search was like a really good or great tool until 2005 or even later, and then very rapidly as they dominated the markets that they were into, has gotten bad. And now all of a sudden you've got what's happening with synthetic intelligence kind of reinforming that stuff, and stuff shifts. Stuff gets weighted differently. But I think to kind of go back to the beginning of the premise here too is, I know Heidi doesn't necessarily maintain her website. Jaji, I think you do.
I don't even have one anymore.
Oh, you got rid of it completely.
I do have a website.
I just let it die.
But yeah, I mainly do Substack now. What I have on my website that I try to keep up is I have both a Superversive authors list and the mail reading list that I did last year that I put up there. And I do try to keep that. And I have a website called Fantastic Schools that used to be part of Subversive Press that Chris Nuttall and I maintain, and we don't do much with that anymore either. But I do have a list there of magic schools. You're talking about the magic school books, and there's over 100, I think, on it, of just like whenever I find a new one, I add it to the list. I try to keep that up. And every now and then he writes a review that I post. But I used to do both of those websites like every week. And now I work on my Substacks, and I don't do my website that much. I maybe should try to run the Substack stuff on my website also, but I have not.
I wouldn't do that. You don't want to duplicate that content that way. What you can do is tap a subdomain and hit a redirect to your Substack if you wanted. There's that option.
I think that my husband has just been working with his webmaster on trying to have his stuff from his website. Somehow there was a Substack for him, and he had no idea why it was there, and people used to sign up to it. And finally he said, well, maybe he could have stuff from his blog appear there for whoever it is that was randomly signing up. We have no idea where it came from. But I haven't done that. I've put one or two things, like I've been using my website more for things like I just described, for lists. I have a list of my books, but it's not up to date. I really need to update that, where you had a link to Amazon for everything.
Let me ask you this. What things were you doing on your website that you've moved over to Substack that aren't blogging or newsletter function related? Actually, this is the question I wanted to ask you, and you can answer both of them, but this is the more important one. Do you manage or maintain any analytics that have access to your website directly?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, I at one point maybe I did once upon a time, but no, I don't really do anything with it now.
What about John?
I don't think he ever pays attention to that kind of thing. He just posts.
I would love to see the analytics for both of your sites, because that, to me, like, I assure you, that you guys have a bunch of trove of data there.
Years ago, during the period, I don't know, it was like 2008 to 2012 or 13, somewhere in that period, when I was doing Wright's Writing Corner, I had a lot of guest people come on.
Mm-hmm.
I used to look at the analytics and see what was going on. And nowadays, I don't. I don't even know how to do it anymore, because the thing has changed slightly. I'm not even sure where to look. I used to know in the old one exactly where to look, but I had to migrate to a new spot because we changed webmasters.
Yeah, that's all it goes.
My old webmaster retired from webmastering.
Yeah.
So I don't even know how to do it now. But so I don't really know. There was a time when I did, and I knew that certain authors I brought on, I got a much bigger response and things like that. But
for sure, yeah. And that, see, like, you were kind of in that like golden age of like when traditional publishing had discovered to snap up the bloggers, the mommy bloggers of the 2000s, and it was happening then.
It was a period when people, this is just what I know, it's just from people I know. This is not like any kind of studied trend, but there was a period where people went to websites and read websites regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And then Facebook took over, and you started seeing a lot of people just going to Facebook and seeing what was posted there and only following a link if it was there, and Twitter and things like that. So there was a period when people would go to certain sites and read that site all the time. And some people still do. But I've run into people who are like, oh, yeah, I used to read, your husband's blog all the time or something like that. And now they go to Twitter or they go to Facebook or whatever it is like that. And they see the stuff there, and they tend to not think as much about going to look for somebody else's stuff that's not right there.
You've stopped them from maintaining the habit, right, and like have not necessarily, and this is not like me pointing a finger at you. We all do this with all kinds of stuff and all kinds of projects on the web, just across the way.
Well, not John. I mean, he's kept his website up the whole time.
That's not what I'm going to say here. Actually, what I'm going to finish saying is the technology advances, and if we're not on top of it, 10 years of web development advancement against a website that is still, prior to all of the innovations you're talking about with Facebook and mobile responsive design and like SEO getting solidified and like social integrations tapping into the website and then kind of getting sucked out as a result of that. But see, that's just the thing. Like we go for that dopamine hit, but we're actually like cutting ourselves off at the knees by stopping owning the domains, owning the namespace, owning the media and the conduit and the users, by giving them up to these walled gardens. So, these kind of things go hand in hand. But the funny thing is, it's like these large tech companies, social media, social networks predominantly, undermine the value of the web to build up their user base to sell ads. And it's like, okay, well now I got to pay more money to get conversion through ads over to a website or the point of sale because I can't do it on Facebook. So they've undermined the value of the website while also like ramping up the cost to drive traffic to a website. So
yeah, that's true. What I was just going to say is John keeps his up, and which is nice. But he also has seen that, like, when something exciting is happening, like sad puppies or a political thing that he has some particular, reason to weigh in on, then he gets a lot more traffic than just nowadays when, he gets some people who come by all the time. But it's not the same as when they were being driven there by controversy and things like that.
Or just natural organic traffic.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things on the internet that, clickbait and anger and things tend to fuel reactions. And, and you don't necessarily want to buy into that, but obviously it also does, in fact, drive reactions. So kind of ongoing issue.
I personally think it's reversed now. I don't think you're going to get anywhere with a website. I think you get somewhere where people are looking, and then once you have a name, then if you put a website together, that would make sense to me. Because right now it's just an island in a fog for most people.
I mean, that's how you feel about it, but that's not.
Yeah, it's been my opinion and my experience. I don't agree. I just don't agree. I think it's a waste of time, frankly.
That's okay for you to think that, but people don't maintain $1 million websites because they're wastes of time.
Yeah, but they have $1 million. You're misunderstanding.
No,
I'm saying it's reversed.
No.
If I had that sort of capital and that sort of, numbers behind me, yeah, it would absolutely be worth maintaining. But I don't. So at this,
how do you think the value of a website is established?
I think it's established by the name.
It's established by the value of the content on it.
Well, I think it's established by the value of how you're able to get the content in front of people.
I mean, it's if I can get that, I could write the greatest novel in the world, and if no one reads it, there's no value, so to speak. If we're going to put it monetary.
We're not talking about a novel. We're talking about the web.
I am talking about the web. It's the same thing.
It's not.
I look at it the same way.
Well, you can look at it the same way, and I'm telling you it's not.
All other things aside, I think there's a certain value to authors to having a site where you at least have your name and your works listed, which reminds me I need to update my works. But I try to put the anthologies I'm in on, and then not only do I have a lot of them, but some of them go out of print, and then I'm like, okay, I have to redo the whole thing. I do think there's a value to just having a place where someone can go and just say, okay, I can find your things here. Though I must say that nowadays I usually tend to go to Amazon for that, if I want to see what else a person has written rather than to their own website. But I still think there's some value in it.
This is the interesting thing you said there too, where you're like, you can put something somewhere, but it might disappear. And that can happen across the entirety of the web. Websites disappear, or they, they don't necessarily disappear, but they change, or they, like, MySpace still exists. That's still a website you can go to, but all the stuff that we did there back in the day is gone. So, yes, I think that social networks need to be kind of like that. They need to be on the first line of your offensive, but they really need to be kind of moving in lockstep with a website. Doing social media and not driving backlinks to your own website through that stuff, I don't see a capacity to compete for namespace and keywords on social networks, like kind of longitudinally in the same way. And I think that that's very much exemplified by the fact that, like, posts on social networks typically disappear and you don't end up getting a ton of engagement on them, say, a year later or 6 months later. Whereas, a good blog post or a good article on a website can continue to grow its traffic. You can go back and update it, which you can't do on social networks, and retarget keywords, add additional media into there. It is, again, a space that you own. Robin, you got your hand raised. What are you thinking?
Oh, hi.
Hey.
I'll add to this lively discussion. And I'll say that, first of all, I think that one word that is missing in the discussion is author. I think we're talking about author website, maybe not 100%, but some of us are and some of us aren't. And it depends. I need a website because I am pitching my book to publishers. And I don't mean the big five. I don't mean, Penguin or any of the big publishers. Even the smaller presses, the independent presses, they have if you're going to do, some of them want you to submit through Submittable or whatever, and they have a field for what is your website. And if you don't have a website, you can't continue. It is required. Now, do they look at it? Yes, they do. And I think some of them just want to see that you have a website. It's more like street cred in a way. In fact, when you were talking, I was just looking at my website, which, I go on and I clean up the spam from my email because it's really disgusting, all the spam and the, hey, I want to publish your book crap that you get. And I do get a fair amount of traffic. I mean, not a lot, certainly, to my website. And I assume, I can't tell, it doesn't give you the domain names that are hitting your website. I assume it's from these small presses that just want to see that I have a presence. Now, if you're publishing independently, if you're doing other things, you may not, it's an expense and you may not want it or need it. And the other thing, I guess, that I wanted to say, you were talking about Substack and backlinks. I have Substack. I think it's called Backlinked. Michael, you were saying it's where my articles from Substack are not posted again on my website. It's just that there's a link to my Substack on my website so people can go to my Substack and subscribe and read on my Substack, which to me is helpful. So again, it depends, and I need it for what I'm doing.
Yeah. There was something that you mentioned in there too. So, there are free options for websites out there. I'm not an advocate for that. Hosting does cost money, but again, the control, I think, is valuable. That's what I was going to ask you. Are you doing any analytics? And just to clarify, so like when a user is looking at your website, you're not going to see their domain. You're going to see their IP address. Now, if they are giving you backlinks, that will show the domain. That where that traffic is coming from. So, just to distinguish between those two things, they're not the same.
Oh, I should mention, I've been talking about my author website. But speaking of free websites, I also have a book website. I have a website for Roanoke Academy, as if Roanoke Academy had its own website, and it's on a free Wix spot. And I haven't kept it up recently, so some of the pages are really charming and some of them really need to be redone. But it has links to the books. It has links back to my website. It has a copy of the map that doesn't appear anywhere else. It has descriptions and photos of rooms and places. It's got a lot of information on there. And if I know somebody likes the series, I share it with them, so, and it's even done, like, if you look at it, it says that it's done by characters in the story who, would be in a position to have a website. It's not very many because my wizards and witches don't have they're not witches and witches, they're sorcerers and sorceresses, don't have technology like modern technology, but there are characters who do, and one of them maintains the website. So that's a fun thing. And the reason I did that was when websites became a thing, I used to go to the website of favorite books and favorite authors. I was always disappointed that there wasn't more about the story. Like, what I really wanted was a little bit of background. There was one time when J.K. Rowling had a website, and you could learn little tiny bits of information about, like, something she decided to almost put in the story, or why she used a name or something like that. And that was like the only person who had something out there where I could go and find out more about the world and the story I liked,
She had the bandwidth to create it, right?
Yeah. But I mean, anybody could have put up an essay, or, you know what I mean? They just didn't. So that's why I went, okay, I'm gonna do a spot on the web where you can go, and it's as if there's more to the world of the.
I remember seeing that. Does she not have that anymore? Because that was really cool. She had, like, the genealogy and who married.
Yeah, I don't know. She might. She had changed her website somewhat. I'm not necessarily saying that it's not there. I just haven't been there in years to look for it. Well, back when I was reading the books, I would go and check it out. I haven't looked. I thought she'd changed it a little bit when they came out with that whole Potterverse thing.
Yeah.
But, which is also a similar thing, though. I mean, that was a similar idea. I think that if you think of your author website as a splash page, where you at least have a spot for coordinating and finding information, where maybe you have your Substack and other things, it seems to me there's definite value in it. But one of the things I ran into just recently, I was talking to somebody who was on, I think it was Instagram. And they were asking me why I wasn't on Instagram, and I was like, well, in the early days of the web becoming a big thing, my publisher back then, I was with Tor still, would say, oh, you have to be here, oh, you have to be there, and I'd rush around and I'd try to get a presence. And I hit a point where I was maintaining a presence in a few different places, including some places that are not there now and some that are. And any more time spent on this and I'd never get a word written, And I had to kind of decide, I'm just going to go with these things that I know how to do, and I'm not going to chase everything. So it makes me a little sad when I hear about, there's a lot more book people on Instagram and TikTok. I'm like, well, that's nice. But at this point, I can't really put in the time to chase that down, because I only can do so much, And maybe that would have been a good place to be, but you can only do so much.
So let's say not necessarily maintain a content strategy across all platforms, but I do agree with what Tor told you to do, which is to go claim the namespace so that you have it, so that other people don't, so that you can't necessarily create, that conflict.
I think I have accounts all over the place, but I don't visit. Well, one thing, a lot of the, for one thing, I don't make little videos, which is what you really need for like TikTok or Instagram. And just not, I'm working with words more. So that's the other reason why I didn't pursue those, it would be a whole nother, and I'm not saying it's not a good thing. I'm sure if I had infinite time, it would be a really good thing, but you have to kind of pick your battles, and you have to go, okay, I've got people I'm talking to here, and I have readers I'm interacting with here. And, but I can only do so much. And might I have been better if I picked this one and that one instead? I might well have, but I still can only do so much, I'm trying to pick the things that have some value to them, maybe as years go. I mean, you're going to ask me, next year, might I do it differently? Sure, I might drop one and pick up another if I became convinced. But I do think we can only, if we're going to put time into writing, and it's a really, time consuming thing, there's only so much more that we can do. And we have to try to kind of pick our battles on, how can we present ourselves in a way where the time we have to do it is a reasonable amount of time.
What do you think are your most valuable digital marketing tactics, Jaji?
I can tell you, like, the last couple of months, I think, and I could be wrong. Well, first of all, I think the Facebook sale is helpful. Other than that, the thing that I found the best is I'm in one or two Facebook groups for Christian or homeschooling moms who ask for recommendations. And I think I've gotten more traction just by, if they're looking for a boy, I post certain things at John's. If they're looking for a girl, mine. And sometimes I'll post things by friends because they're looking for something that's, for little kids. And I don't have that or something like that. But I think I've had some really good luck with posting things in those groups and actually got some sales out of it, which is not necessarily the case with a lot of other things that I do. I get some traction on X, but only usually when I spend a huge amount of time on it. Like, there's been some months when, almost like maybe there's some big thing in the news, and I spend hours and hours and hours on X, which I don't normally do. And then I start getting a lot more responses and interactions and stuff. But normally I can't afford to do that. Normally it's like, I don't know, 10 minutes a day or half an hour a day or whatever,
So if I say digital marketing, these are the silos that I mean. So it'd be like email, paid search, web, site maintenance, blogging, articles. You could make a dotted line over to Substack for that.
I think it would be the articles. I mean, the Substack articles is probably and
then again, like, social media would be a silo. But I mean, if you had to rank those groups, how would you rank them? Most valuable first.
I don't know, probably Substack right now, because see, Substack is my newsletter. I mean, I treat it like posting online.
Yeah. So would you say that the majority of that volume is coming from email or from the actual Substack app?
I can't tell because every Substack post is also an email to the people.
I know, but it tells you the percentage difference between that when you go into the stats.
I never look at it.
Gotcha.
I don't look at it.
My suspicion is that it's email and not the Substack app that's...
Oh, I should say, yes. No, I would agree. I would think that the majority of people interacting are the people who've signed up and are receiving the email.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I do occasionally get new people from Substack, which is nice, but it's a trickle slowly adding in, It's not a rush.
When you signed up to Substack, did you add your existing, or did you have an existing mailing list to add on there?
Yes. That's why I signed up, because I was paying a lot of money.
Because it was free.
I was paying a lot more money to MailChimp than I was making, because you had to pay every month, but I didn't have a new release every month, And I did have a trickle, and I did, try to go back to older works and stuff, but it just was not. And every time I wanted to add more addresses in, it got more expensive.
See, that's the funny thing too, because that's a service that you could integrate that right into your website too. All that could be maintained on a website.
Yeah, but when I moved to Substack, it was like the best of all worlds because it was easier to post there than on my personal website because my personal website's a little bit old-fashioned.
Yeah.
And I kept it because I liked the way it worked. It looked and worked, but it was a little harder to post.
I think you're still on like an old content management system that's like desktop only. It's not responsive, is it?
No, it's quite old.
Yeah.
I like it, so I didn't change it. But on Substack, I had my email list, my newsletter. I wasn't being charged. I make a little bit of money on it, and I post my articles there. So I have, and that's why I have so many different Substacks. My actual newsletter that was just for people who wanted book news exists as its own Substack. And then occasionally I let people know, I have these other Substacks if you'd like to visit them. But I don't send people who signed up for news about John's books, my articles about, whatever I'm writing about or something.
This was my point. I think Substack is far more valuable, at least currently, than a website. I mean, no one's going to be hunting, and I think you have to consider friction. It's like directing them to where they can buy your book as opposed to having them go through layers, I think is a better approach. So, I mean, you can do all this, you can study things, you can look at your analytics. It's like, I don't have time for that,
Well, it's true. I mean,
I don't have time for that. I don't know why you're laughing at me.
I feel like I'm doing 3 jobs. I get up and I deal with my daughter's family. Mm-hmm. And then I come home and I make dinner. And then I get to sit down and I have a certain number of hours during which I have to do all the maintaining of anything I'm trying to maintain, all the editing that I need to do, and then write my novel, which is time consuming,
Yes, it is a lot. And I mean, it's it isn't, you can compartmentalize it as much as possible, but you simply have to pick priorities. And I simply cannot make that a priority. What's more important to me is creating my content, and I mean, that to me is where I'm at. I don't have this massive back thing behind me, that can support all of this stuff. So
that's why
the more time I spend like doing, putting together the Substack, or even not Substack so much, but putting together all this stuff that maybe 5 people go look at, it's pointless. I mean, from the position I'm in. Yeah, now if I had huge mailing lists and people wanted to hear about stuff and I was J.K. Rowling, yeah, absolutely. It makes perfect sense to have a bigger sort of infrastructure. But to me, it's like playing a game of Risk. It's like I can only occupy and protect so many countries at a time without my armies falling to pieces at the first attack. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah. It's one reason why I really miss the old publisher setup, because honestly, being good at writing, which is a thing you have to really work at. I mean, if you read what I wrote 20, 30 years ago, you would not believe that I could write what I wrote now. You know what I mean? I mean, the difference is amazing, but it's because I kept working at it. You know what I mean? I didn't start out a good writer, and I mean, I threw out over 1,000 pages, and I've written 14 versions of a certain novel that I don't even know if I'm ever going to publish. But just to get to the point where I can now do what I'm doing, well, it's just an entirely different skill from marketing. And I do spend a little, and I had studied the marketing things for what was like 20 years ago, and I had worked at it, and almost none of what I had to put time into before is worth anything now. So the question is, where are you putting your time in? Working and understanding marketing requires time. And I have spent some time on it. I've taken a class or 2 and things like that. But honest to gosh, I wish I had a publisher who would do it for me. I mean, if it seems to me that they're so different in the quality of what you need to do, what you need to spend time on, what you need to understand, that I wish I could just write and I didn't have to do any other things. But that, right now that's not the case,
To have a publisher doing the marketing for you, what is that worth?
Well, if I had a good publisher, I'd be willing to go back to the old deal. I used to get 6%. But nowadays the publishers are not really doing this, I'm hoping that we'll get something like personal AIs that can help us with this, or something else, that something will develop, or packagers that are good at marketing and are willing to. And I know there are the guys out there, but a lot of them are like, you need $10,000 in order to get a good one, and that's not an option. So
a good what? A good one of.
To get a person who's actually a good marketer.
Oh.
There are marketers out there who are good marketers, and there are people I know who've, gotten somebody to help them, and the person really knows what they're doing, but they're expensive.
Yeah.
Because they're good at it, So they usually, why work for one author when you can work for some big company? You know what I mean? But I do wish something like that was about, because I don't feel like I'm particularly good at it. And I did when I was younger. I thought I knew what to do. And I did, in fact, get my husband and I into the publishing company that we wanted. And we ended, we'd go to conventions, and we were on panels, and we were doing everything that at the time was the stuff to do, But now it's like every day you come out and there's something new. One thing's gone away. There's a new thing that everybody suddenly somehow knows, and I haven't gotten on yet. I find it difficult.
Yeah.
I try to stick with the ones that I understand, at least enough that I feel like I'm not making a fool of myself.
So the thing for me, I think, like, when you're thinking about putting out this work, right, and you look at, say, like the film industry and how it works, obviously there have been a couple of hits that have been very low budget kind of runaways recently that have grabbed headlines, that have just been, it's fantastic. It's the stuff that Chris and I have been talking about for a couple of years, ideally returning to the industry. So it's good to see. But the thing that has been operationally, kind of how they budgeted projects is whatever the cost of production for a film was, then they're going to put the same amount of resources towards the marketing. And I'm pretty sure I've said this in the past before too, to where it's like, okay, well, we're authors, we're doing a lot of bootstrap stuff. Maybe it doesn't cost a lot of money for us to put our books out. But there's still time, and if you're going to put in a month on a project, maybe put in a month promoting it.
Well, the problem with that is, so here I am, and I have 16 books I'm supposed to finish for this series. And a month ago, I had somebody who had been a paying supporter of my novel-related Substack dropped out and said, "You haven't written anything recently." My having put out a book in 2023 and written some short stories since then was not enough for this person. And I can only write so quickly. You know what I mean? And every minute I spend on something else is me not getting the next book finished. So if I go, okay, let's say I spend a month writing and a month on promoting, that's half the book's done. So that's what I'm saying. The old model was the author wrote and somebody else did the rest of the job.
Yeah.
And that was really well set up for authors.
Yeah.
But this job where it's like, okay, I'm trying to do this thing. It takes a tremendous amount of time. I have to put time aside. I really don't write well unless I have an uninterrupted period, which is one of the issues I have. Yeah. So I finally get going. I'm writing. And now I'm supposed to stop writing and go do another thing that I haven't learned how to do,
Yeah. Let's jump ahead to the outcome. So you mentioned before wanting, say, maybe some kind of like AI assistant that is going to maybe shoulder some of the burden of marketing or other, just being an assistant in general.
Or a human being.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, I'm not a human being, specifically synthetic for this example I'm lining out. So
I'm hoping something like that will come along.
Well, so going back to when I was trying to get a hierarchy of things that you would put more energy into. So like if the most valuable thing is your email list, then the top priority for, say, like a synthetic assistant would be potentially drafting newsletters and trying to increase subscriber base, right? So like those kind of things, I was doing that stuff on Twitter a number of years ago before they shut off the API. It was fantastic. Now we have LLMs, yet they can do a lot of what you're insinuating that you want, or kind of talking around what would be valuable, right? So it's something that I'm looking at, and like my promo program is kind of, I don't want to say rigorous, but it's standardized. And I think that when you're dealing with like standard and best practices, that you can get these engines to follow along with you. I've only started to dabble with that idea a little bit, and it's not something that's a priority for me, but it is something that I think that, like, particularly, kind of going back even to the beginning of the conversation, we're talking about like web design, maintaining a website. So I've been, just kind of like combing through little stuff on my site, and my site's very, very plain. It has literally been meant to be a brochure for the last 5 years, or however long I've had it, 6 years or something, live. And the thing now is, I've worked with HTML and CSS and JavaScript and all this other CMSs and stuff over the years, but it's a hassle, and I don't want to do all that stuff. And I don't want to sit and have to like think about solving the problem when I can sit and talk to Claude about, HTML and CSS and getting to what are now the set of marketing priorities and content development strategy priorities that I'm going to explore over the remainder of this year on the website. But as for today, any final thoughts? We're going to wrap it up.
I always like your point of view, Michael, because you're sharp on different issues than where Heidi and I put our attention. And while we can't quite keep up with you on some of these things, I really appreciate like seeing your point of view of how you're seeing these things. So I really enjoy these kind of conversations.
I hate web development. Okay. I have been doing it since I was a child, and it sucks, and it's a total drag. I don't want any more development. I'm over it. I'm now full on pushing for the Butlerian jihad, and the only way past is through. So at any rate, enjoy the rest of your day, and
you guys too.
Tuesday Heidi will be hosting. We'll come up with a theme for the discussion.
Yeah, so I'll see everybody in 2 weeks. I'll talk to you guys.
Oh yeah, Judge is out too. Yeah.
Okay, right. Yeah. Okay, well,
I'll be on a plane.
All right, we are closing it down. Be good. We'll Heidi hosts next Tuesday, and look for that to show up before too long as well. Have a good one.